everybody. Welcome to Pealed Back's LiveCast Conversations with, as always, I'm your host, Gene the Enjoyment Coach, and this is episode 65. Today on episode 65, I get to have my friend, Krista Brenner, on the show. Krista has over 13 years of experience as a recruiter, which has gained her incredible knowledge and expertise in finding and matching the best people with incredible opportunities at the organizations she's worked with. She truly cares about focusing on long-term strategic workforce planning for all involved. As a recruiter, she's looking beyond just the skills, the qualifications, experience, and pays attention to the passions, the motivations, the inspirations, and the communication styles. Her philosophy is not focused on finding the perfect candidate. Instead, she's searching for the best person for the role. It's about matching an opportunity to the best person to ensure they can thrive and find success within the organization. Krista shares her perspectives, insights, and knowledge from the recruitment process on LinkedIn regularly to help candidates demystify the job searching process and provides actionable information to help everybody. Krista, my words can definitely not do you full justice. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks for asking me to join you.
Oh, that's a no-brainer. That is a no-brainer. So let's get started talking about your journey into recruitment. You've been in this for over 13 years. What drew you to this role?
Well, you'll hear a lot of recruiters say that we fell into it. I don't know if you fall per se. I'm pretty klutzy, but I don't know if you fall into it. But it's not where my journey started. I started working in international education as an English teacher, actually, and I went overseas. I left Canada. For people who don't know, Gene and I are in a little Canadian tribe. We all love our Canadianness and we work together on that. But I left Canada about 10 years ago and I started as an English teacher in Costa Rica and then moved into being the director of the English school. And through that, I started recruiting teachers to join us. And that's how I sort of started into the recruitment. When I left Costa Rica, I ended up in South Georgia. I'm going to try very hard to keep my Southern accent out of this. And you're laughing. And Stephen, if you're watching, I know that you are listening
He's
for it.
He's waiting for it.
I know he's waiting for it. I'm going to work real hard to keep it out. But I lived in South Georgia for about 9 years. Worked at a university in international education and did recruitment of students. So international education is a little bit different than what I'm doing now with healthcare recruitment, but definitely fell into it. Didn't plan on doing this. I started going to school for English. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to continue being a teacher. Then when I started doing the recruitment, I shifted into human resources. I got my master's in human resource management and public administration. So that shifted my journey for sure. When I came back to Canada in 2017, I was applying everywhere. And like Gene mentioned, I write a lot on LinkedIn about advice for job seekers. And it's because I've been there and I've been in that excruciating journey where it's awful. You feel like that job description's written for you. I applied. I job hunted like it was my job. And then I landed in healthcare recruitment and I absolutely adore it. Love it, eh? Hey, Mike. Mike is
very
here.
Canadian.
Very Canadian, yes. He made me lose my train of thought in minute 2, Mike. I'm going to blame you later for that. Healthcare recruitment is really super rewarding because while I can't provide patient care, I'm not clinical in any way. I know that I can use my skills and expertise to help match people with their perfect careers. And I think I've done okay with it.
Nice. Well, it sounds like I love that whole like falling into it and learning about what brings more of that out for you is, you know, obviously these skills have served you well and they continue to serve all these, you know, you've gone from different industries, I guess. So like, what is the magic of being able to take these skills and transport them to any industry, right? You talk about being in the healthcare system, being able to serve it from a much different lens than people would be like, oh, healthcare, we're thinking nurses, we're thinking doctors, we're thinking in the hospital. Yeah. But you're serving it just as much because we need those nurses and those doctors in those hospitals.
Absolutely. The pandemic has really brought out a lot. It's brought a lot of attention on what healthcare workers are doing, but there hasn't been as much of an emphasis on what the people on the administrative side have been doing. And I don't mean that anyway in a negative slight. Everyone has been struggling with it. But if you think about my last year, my workload increased 4 times the amount. My job requisitions went up 4 or 5 times the amount. I think I placed, before I left my last role, I had hired 1,247 people to fill roles in a year time span. Yeah. And I don't say that to pat myself on the back in any way. That's not my style, but the needs were so huge during the pandemic.
Right.
And a lot of resources were put on the clinical side because you needed the nurses and the respiratory therapists and the occupational therapists and the clerical people to work on the units. But yet the administrative side did really struggle with it, for lack of a better word, because there weren't the additional resources put to us. But it's unique that I'm able to keep that passion for it because I really believe in what I'm doing. And even though, like I said, I'm not giving the bedside patient care, I know what I'm doing is placing those nurses there. I know I'm placing those registered nurses and registered practical nurses and PSWs and clerical people into roles that are going to be life-saving. And to me, at the end of the day, that's really gratifying.
That's incredible. And I want to take a minute, you brushed right past the whole placing over 1,000 new people within the healthcare industry. Be like, that deserves an actual pat on the shoulder. That is an incredible amount of people.
Yeah.
What would be I'll use air quotes, normal situation for if shit wasn't hitting the fan and we didn't need that, what's a rate, was that really 4x of what it normally is?
So when I shifted into healthcare recruitment, I started at my awesome organization that I was at before in an administrative capacity and then shifted into the recruitment based on my experience. And when they brought me on board to the recruitment side, there were, I think at a high note, there were 65 open job requisitions, which was a lot. It was a lot of positions to fill. You don't want to have vacancies in a hospital, but it's just the reality of where we're at. There's a lot of people, a lot of vacancies, a lot of movement, a lot of retention, all those fun things. When the pandemic hit, I was at any time working on 180 job requisitions by myself.
That's just for one person hunting down and finding that best match.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Thank you for your service. Well, it's true. You might not be the one sitting there beside the patients, but you're putting the people and the best fits beside those patients. Mm-hmm. That's doing a huge service for it all, right? It's an incredible piece that I think a lot of people kind of miss over their time and gloss over in those big, huge organizations like healthcare.
I think it's glossed over a lot in the public because there's a lot of confusion about what recruiters do. And Joel, he's my favorite recruiter that I follow on LinkedIn religiously. He said, at the end of the day, you can call yourself a talent acquisition specialist like I have in my title. You can call yourself anything that you want. But at the end of the day, we're recruiters. And I'm super proud of that because I love it, because I'm matching people with the jobs that are going to make them happy. I tell all my candidates, I'm here to support you through your journey. I'm not just here to interview you and pass you along. But there's a lot of misconceptions about what we do. And I'm really passionate about breaking those myths because a recruiter is there to partner with someone. I am not here to find a person in the audience that's going to raise their hand and say, I can be a nurse. Well, sure you can. Everybody can. But it's about being the best person for the job at the right time. And sometimes we can feel like we're the right person for the job, but you need a recruiter who's going to be unbiased and impartial, who can look at it from all sides and understand the industry, understand the organization, understand the team you're going into, but then also really dive into who the candidate is in order to make really good matches.
That sounds like you're holding a lot of things to make all this happen and spin that way. The one word that really stood out was this unbiased component of it. How did you get yourself to that place? Because that doesn't sound like a natural thing. We're oh, okay, I can just be unbiased and we'll go about it. We're finding the best person, where a lot of the times in those situations, from my outside perspective, it's people are looking for the perfect candidate. Mm-hmm. Maybe let's demystify the idea of the perfect candidate and then how you figure out how to match, but how do you hold both the organizational need and that best fit so well?
It's a tough balance for sure. The hiring managers will have one expectation. The organization will have one expectation. The marketing department might have one expectation. Legal definitely has their own expectations. There's a lot of there's a lot of balancing for sure. How did I get to this point? I am so grateful and appreciate every single day my 10 years working in international education, because I worked with cultures from around the world, and I feel like I got a really good understanding of working with people, whether it was working with government agencies who were sending students overseas to study, or if it was students who wanted to come aboard, or it was parents reaching out to me because their kids were in trouble, or my students. I also taught at the same time as managing my full-time job and pursuing my master's at the same time. I was also teaching at the same time, and all of my students would come to me if they were having a baby in the hospital and they needed someone who spoke the language. Now, I don't speak all the languages. I certainly don't, but I have found a way to communicate with a lot of people. And I think that I don't like to compliment myself in any way. I am the most terrible person for that at all times. But I think that I have found a really good knack for working with people for where they are in that moment, because we can have expectations of where we think someone should be. And because they're not there, we can't penalize them for that. And we can't hold opportunities away from them. So my international education experience really brought me to where I am now, because I feel like I can work with a lot of people from all cultures around the world. I lived it, I breathed it, I experienced it. They were my family. I was living outside of Canada. I wrote my 250-page thesis on international education. I did all the things with working internationally. So it's given me a really good perspective on being able to do my job now. And a lot of people will ask me, what the heck does education and healthcare have to do with one another? And yes, those skills are transferable. A recruiter at the end of the day knows what they have to do that 360 cycle, but they are very different. They're a completely different niche, and it can be a big gap in between them. But if you just start at the basics of there's a job to fill and there's a person who wants it, the rest of it is just logistics.
Oh, I love that. That is very similar to like back in my day. I sound old.
Back in my day,
when we walked uphill both ways to get to school
in the snow, no shoes.
Well, I referenced that because I was a developer many moons ago, and people were like, "Oh, it's like switching languages, like programming languages." Be like, it's all like the same. They're just using different syntax to get the same type of jobs done, right? And I'm sure there'll be a developer out there that will crucify me for saying that, but I stand by it, so come at me, bro.
I'll watch the comments.
But yeah, it's interesting. Like, can you boiling it down to like what are the bare essentials? Like, what is this job? It's having a role that needs to be filled and finding a fit for it, and the rest is figuring out the conversational style and like the emotional need of that client or that organization you're stepping into.
Mm-hmm. The recruitment I have done is very different in that I've never gone into the headhunting world, or I've never gone into the agency world where you're placing anyone anywhere. I prefer personally, there's nothing wrong with other styles of recruitment, but I prefer to partner with an organization where I can get behind the values and believe in it. I wrote the other day about passion, right? If you don't have passion for what you are asking people to do, then they will see through that. And I had an opportunity about a year ago where someone had asked me to branch into the IT recruitment world. And I thought about it for a moment, and I thought, this is a great opportunity. This will be something different. Maybe I should push myself. But at the end of the day, and I had a call with another recruiter who I really respect and admire. He's in Arizona. And I said, at the end of the day, I don't know if I can be passionate about it. I don't know if I can be passionate about the IT world. And there's nothing wrong with the IT world. Don't crucify me in the comments. Leave that for Jean. There's nothing wrong with that. But for me, it's so important to me that I'm really passionate and believe in what I'm doing. And if I can answer the question, sorry, my German Shepherd is howling upstairs. I don't know if you can hear her. But
it's all good.
She's like losing there.
Male person's coming to the door.
Probably. There's a cat walking by, I'm sure. For me, if I don't believe in what I'm trying to ask you to do, then I have no business asking you to do it. And it's not about trying to convince you about something. I am very anti-snake oil salesman. I am not selling you on a pipe dream. But if I don't believe in the role that I'm asking you to do, then I don't have any business asking you to do it.
And that, to me, speaks of the maturity of being within that role, right? And that maturity has nothing to do with age, and we're definitely not asking that here today. But like that is like that's owning that role and seeing the sacredness, I think, in it in such a different way. Like that's experience. That's all these other things coming into play going, we're dealing with people, we're dealing with souls. How do we get to speak to the soul? Because if we can empower the soul, so much more can happen.
Yep.
My words.
And especially in healthcare. No, I think you're absolutely right. And in healthcare, we are talking about saving people's lives. You're talking about keeping people alive. I had never been sick in my entire life. My ever first time being in a hospital was when my son was born 3.5 years ago. But I was very sick last year. They still don't know what was wrong, but I was in the hospital for 2 stints, 11 days one time, and then 7 days the second time, 3 weeks apart. And the nurses that took care of me were so passionate about getting me better, and they cared about who I was. And that really made my passion even stronger, because I thought, you know what? I could ask 50 people right now. I could put up a sign on the side of the road and ask who wants to be a nurse. And I'll probably get 50 people who said, yep, I want to. But for me, I want that person who's going to be at a bedside, who will be with that person laying in a bed, scared, afraid, in COVID, no visitors, away from their children. I want that person who's going to go that extra step. And that just changed my vision even more to what I'm doing. And I think that's important.
It's powerful. It's a horrible way to go to experience that, but like the fact that you got to experience it and it just spoke to it even more. It sounds, the way you talked about it, it felt like your fire just was getting lit higher and higher.
It did. I kept working because I am a terrible workaholic, like terrible. I love working. It's our secret, and everyone else who might be watching. I love working. I'm super passionate about my job. I love working. I'm good at what I do. I can try to say that I'm good at what I do, but I would have nurses that would come in and they'd say, are you the Krista that just sent me my offer letter? There's a lot of internal movement in organizations, right? So I would have nurses who would shift jobs from part-time to full-time, or they would shift into charge nurse roles or any other opportunity they might be interested in. They'd come in and they'd say, no, you can't be the same one. And I'd say, yes, I am. Let me shut my laptop and we'll talk. I don't recommend that to anyone. I'm not saying that for anyone, but it changed my perspective on the nurses that we need. And we need nurses that are going to care about our patients.
Oh, 100%. Bedside manner is a big thing.
Yep.
So in one of your last posts, and I kind of like slipped it into the write-up that I did for you today, is because it spoke to me. It's like that concept of like the perfect fit and the best fit is like, when did you start to make that a different, like pull those two things apart?
Let me think how I can word this. When I was job hunting, like it was my job, I woke up every morning. I sat at my mom's kitchen table because I had just moved back to Canada. I'd been gone for a long time after experiencing a really significant loss in the States. And I job hunted like it was my job. I got dressed every day in professional clothes. I sat down every day at the table. And from 9 to 5 with a lunch break, I researched. I did everything I needed to do. And finally, one day I found the job. It was written for me. It was the exact job I had done in the States for 10 years. It was mine. They had written it for me. They somehow knew that it was meant for me. It was destined to be. I applied for it. I was all in. I was so invested. I made it to the interview. I made it to the second interview. And at the end of the day, I got declined. And it was the most soul-crushing experience that I went through. And I am not a crier. And I cried. Like I cried so hard because I wanted that job. And I thought, but that's what I do. That's what I do all day long. And maybe I didn't explain it properly. And how did I not tell them? And I kept going back and forth on, no, I was the best person for the job. Once I shifted into healthcare recruitment and I started going through it and I started interviewing more people and I started partnering with the managers more, and I would walk around the hospital and I would talk to the units and I would talk to the people that are already on the team and I would meet the patients and I got to know the community. Then it really hit me that, you know what, the best person on paper, they're not always the best person for the job. And I know that that's really hard to hear. And I hope I don't get crucified in the comments for saying that. But sometimes a recruiter has to make the decision. They have to make the judgment call on what's going to work and what's not. Interviewing can be really tough. That's a lot of what I do on LinkedIn as well, is give some interview tips of what people can do to set them up for success, which is the pot calling the kettle black, because I hate getting on camera and I am very nervous, which Jean got from multiple messages today being on camera. But the best person sometimes isn't the right person. And you can
Right.
hit all those qualifications 100%. But sometimes at the end of the day, a decision has to be made. And sometimes that decision doesn't go in your favor. And that's the sad reality of it. And I've been there, and I really try to tell all my candidates that I've been there. I try to express it on LinkedIn that I've been there, and I know what it's like. But sometimes you might be the best, but you're not the right one.
Right.
That's not going to make me any friends today.
Well, you know what? Sometimes the truth, they say the truth hurts, but it can also be a learning opportunity as well, right? Like you do share is that what, I'm going to detour a little bit. Is that what powers you to share so much on LinkedIn about the whole process and what you see? Because you we put in your write-up is like, you do give a lot of actionable information in it. And it is nice to see like kind of the side of the recruitment demystified, because there is a lot of people that post like, I've been without work and done the whole like applying for like a lot of jobs prior, after in 2018, like been there, done that, had those sad moments of like, I got in, and then you hear nothing. All right. Like, and so like, I think it's really cool that you shine the light from a different perspective of like wanting to share the information to allow people to thrive. It's like, where's that fire come from? So it sounds like it comes from the fact that you sat in that chair and you had, hundreds and hundreds of applications going out, had the hard hit of being, this is the job for me, and still getting passed over.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you keep coming up with, where I want to go with that? Like, not the how, but like the inspirations that come up from it. Like you just had a poll testing out a write-up. Like I think that's brave to kind of put that stuff out there. And you've got a lot of like engagement around that as well.
It takes more bravery than I thought that I would have. And I love what I do on LinkedIn. I get a lot of enjoyment from it because I know that I'm helping people, and the messages I get from people that say, you know what, I tried that today. Or, hey, I got the job. I have someone that he's also here in Canada. He's actually here in Ontario. He just got a job after a year of being laid off. And it's not because of me, and I don't want any thanks for it. He didn't post on there and said, thanks, Krista, for helping me, because it's not me. It's all him. But sometimes you need that outside perspective to look at it. And I do go that extra step with my candidates. There's also a lot of negativity around recruiters who do decline people. And there's a lot of disconnect in that we don't always make the final decision. And we certainly don't decide the skills and qualifications that are required for a job. I think we could talk for hours about that. We don't get to decide what you will do for your job. Someone tells us what you will do for your job, and then it's our job to find that perfect match. I don't ever take regretting someone or declining someone lightly. I agonize over them. I put Post-it notes on my desk of the people that I need to at the end of the day, because I let them know as soon as I know, and I try to give feedback. Not every time, because it's not always possible sometimes I don't have it. Sometimes it's a legal reason, but I think it's important to communicate with people all the way through the process. And I get a lot of joy from what I do. My job, I get a lot of satisfaction from, and I know that I'm doing a good job, and I know I'm matching people. But what I've been able to do on LinkedIn with communicating with people and helping them, I hope that it helps some people, because I get a lot of joy from it.
Well, I guarantee seeing the engagement that you're getting, it definitely helps. Like, on the flip side, there's so many people that are out there going, I just wish I understood the system. Maybe my resume is getting hit by the famous HR and recruitment robots that are blocking all the resumes. I actually would love to like demystify. Let's get into this one. I knew this was going to be the one.
There is no ATS robot. There's no robot. There is a human that is reading your resume and clicking all the way through. And I think the ATS bot, I have a shirt, Amy Miller. She's a recruiter for for Amazon. Amazon? Nope. Oh my gosh, delete this part out. My brain has completely frozen with Liam being sick and not sleeping in 2 weeks. She's an
Amy
amazing.
Miller, you know who you are.
Amy Miller, you know who you are. She won't be watching this. She's too busy putting people into space with the job she's hiring for. But she has a side gig where she makes shirts, and I have one that says, I am the ATS robot, because I am the person who sits on my couch at night if I don't have time during the day, and I will put something on Netflix in the background for some background noise after my son goes to bed, and I will read resume after resume after resume. And for the ATS bot, we may have some automation to it. There may be some pre-screening questions, but at the end of the day, I don't rely on those pre-screening questions because people lie. They might answer correctly, they might answer incorrectly, but I would never rely on a system to tell me if I should pursue a candidate or not. So the pre-screening questions are there, and a lot of people struggle with them. A lot of people struggle with the automated messages that come back, but you need to have a system for it. We're in 2021. We're about to be in 2022. You need to have a digital filing cabinet, is what Amy calls it. You need to have a way to store all the applications, and that's all it is. But there is a human on the other side of it who is making the decision. And unfortunately, if you got declined for a job, it's because it wasn't meant for you. And that is so tough to take. And that is a tough pill to swallow. And people don't like to hear it because they feel like I did in 2017. They feel like Krista sitting at her mom's kitchen table going, that job is mine. It's mine. It was written for me. But there's 500 other people that feel that way too. All 500 feel that that job was written for them. And it's not written for everybody. It's not going to everybody, unfortunately. So what you can do is set yourself apart as a really strong candidate by finding people who are just trying to help you and are passionate about trying to help you. They're not trying to say, Jean, I have never written a resume for someone for money, and I never will. If someone asks me to peek at their resume to give me some tips, I will give them some tips with the disclaimer of I am not promising to get you a job, because I don't want to be a resume writer. There's some awesome ones out there. And if anyone watching this wants to know who I would recommend, I'm happy to refer you to them off camera if you want to send me a message. That's not me. I am not a resume writer. And I say that because my resume was garbage for a long time. Like, my resume was terrible. Resumes are awful. But if you seek out the people who are really passionate about helping and they don't have an agenda and they're not trying to sell you something, those are the people you should rely on, not the people selling you something.
I love it. So what you've accidentally done is just open the floodgates to everybody to come be like, hey, is my resume okay?
I won't do it. I won't do it. And I have great love and respect for you all, but I know that people will think when they submit their application, they think that that's going to be the selling point, and it isn't always the selling point. And the reality is there's a lot of internal movement in organizations, but they legally have to post jobs internally and externally, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to talk about that. It doesn't mean there's a hidden job market. It doesn't mean that I posted a job that I'm going to give to Tom because Tom is awesome. And I don't know if Tom is watching, but I'm going to call him out. I posted this job for Tom, but I'm just going to go through the formality of posting it. That, in my experience, that has never happened before, but there can be a lot of internal movement. And I think there's a lot of disconnect for people. I've gotten off topic, but there's a lot of disconnect for people that if you were the one in the job and the job came up and you really wanted it and you thought that it was perfect for you, you would want there to be internal movement. You wouldn't want it to go to someone external. And you may, if you're really struggling with it and you were totally invested in it, you may be bitter and resentful and angry that it went to someone external over you. So I think the internal versus external battle is all well and good when you are the external, but if you're the internal, it would be a different story.
Oh, that's that can hit close to home for, I'm sure, a lot of people, right? Like what I take from that is, like, if there's something you want, you got to fight and put your best foot forwards, regardless if you're like the incumbent or you have a little bit of a edge on the inside track.
Absolutely.
So, you know, like you talked about earlier about over 1,000 placements. That wasn't 1,000 resumes. I could only imagine like the storm of resumes that you had to go through to get to over 1,000 placements.
Yes. I don't want to give you numbers. It will make you cry. There's a lot of resumes. And I read them all.
10 per role. That's 10,000, over 10,000 resumes. Just like, that means you spent, we'll say the basement is 10,000 plus resumes. Like, that's a lot of reading.
It is.
So as the ATS machine that you are, I guess, what does it, is there things that help stand out when people are applying for, putting the resume in? Is there something that makes it easier for them to present themselves?
So I will back it up with a brief comment of, I can read very fast. When I was a kid, my mom thought that I was lying, and she used to take my books away from me. I'm not saying I'm a speed reader in any way, but I can read a 300-page book in a day. Like, I can read very quickly. So that has been a very good skill that has helped me with it. But you'll see a lot of people that will talk about, oh, well, a recruiter will make a decision in 6 seconds. Probably. I haven't timed myself, but I can make a decision very, very, very quickly, because we're looking for patterns and consistency, and we know what we're looking for. And if I see those top things I'm looking for, then I will go back and I will read it fully. But you can make a decision pretty quickly. And I think recruiters and people who work in HR get a bad rap for this, because it's so personal when you're applying for a job that you don't want someone to make a decision quickly. But for so many other industries, you would want them to make a decision quickly. You're going to want your surgeon to make a decision quickly if something's happening in 6 seconds. You're going to want your chef to make a decision in 6 seconds quickly. You're going to want your manager to make a decision quickly if you're bombing a presentation in 6 seconds to divert attention or cancel it or do something. There's a lot of decisions that can be made in 6 seconds. So while I haven't timed myself, I've read the articles and I've read the posts about this whole 6 seconds thing. And yes, I can make a decision pretty quickly because I can read so fast and because I can look for those habits, right? What people can do to set themselves apart is as much information as you can include without being redundant. And that's not great advice to people who are doing it, but there's a lot of people who think you need to keep your resume to 1 page, and I absolutely disagree. And I can list off 15 recruiters who will disagree with the 1-page resume myth, and I would like that to go away. And I've been working with a candidate for a couple of months now that she keeps sending me a 1-page resume, and I keep saying, but in our interview, you talked about all of these things, and they're amazing, and they're wonderful. Put them in there. So she'll add one thing, and she'll send it back to me, and I will say, I can't submit your application with this because I'm limited, right? I don't make the decisions. I don't hire. Somebody else does. Some government agency is making that decision. I can't submit you as an applicant because you're not reflecting your experience. And she told me, I made a post about it being very dramatic about your mother's cousin's twice removed brother. You saw it. I made a big joke about it. But a lot of people will say, oh, no, I was told not to submit a resume that was more than 1 page. I absolutely wholeheartedly disagree. And if anyone takes anything that's come out of my mouth today, don't stick with the 1-page resume. If you have relevant work experience, put it on there, because we need to see what you're capable of and what you've done and how long you've worked there. We want to see how your commitment is. We want to see what your loyalty to an organization is. We want to see the patterns of what you've done, how you've changed jobs, how you've grown in your career. If I only did a 1-page resume, you wouldn't have a blip on the radar of what I'm capable of doing. And we look at everything. So the reason why I said redundant is I've also read resumes that have said, I walk dogs in my spare time, and I published a poem in my high school newsletter. And I'm not, you're laughing. These are things that I have read. I have read them multiple times, not just once. I have seen people put their hobbies on there that take up 3/4 of a page. If it's redundant and it's not applicable to the job that you want, it does not belong on your resume. If you have 6 pages of work experience, put it on there and submit it.
Interesting. So if it's relevant to the work, put it in there. And it doesn't matter about how short or how long it is. Like, the more relevant, the better. And if you're talking about your coloring contest you won, submitting it to a fire station back when you were 7 years old and winning the trophy, this guy. But something tells me that's not going to get me hired.
Do you have it on your bookshelf behind you?
I don't. I was just thinking about that. I'm pretty sure it's still at my parents' house.
Well, you're going to have to go get it.
Christmas, here we come.
Here we come.
Yeah, I think it's actually downstairs. Tangent. We're not here to talk about some 7-year-old.
We're going to be later.
But I think that's a really powerful statement. And like the other thing that comes up is like, oh, when you hear people that have been given that advice, who's giving you that advice? That's the thing. Listening to you is like, where's that advice coming? Are you talking to other people that are hiring people, or are you talking to people that are trying to get hired? And if it's trying to get hired, be like, maybe trust Krista and the other people that are telling you, be like, begging you, be like, this is how you get in front of me. This is how you tell me your story. You're telling them your work history story. Mm-hmm. And it's that fine line, like, because we talked earlier about how like passions and motivations and stuff come to it. But I think that's probably more that needs to come out in that interview part. Am I wrong about like where those lines are?
I coined a phrase, and I'm probably not the first person that's ever said it, but the interview is your chance to leap off the paper. A lot of people will come into a resume and they will tell me point by point what they've done in their career. And I learned probably about 2 years ago, I start all my interviews by saying, okay, Jean, thanks for joining me today. I want you to feel comfortable asking all of your questions. Don't feel like you have to wait for the end. I have read your resume in great detail. I know all about your work experience, so you don't have to go through your career point by point, but I would like you to tell me about you, why you love your job, why you do your job, and why you think you'd be the best person for this job. And often it takes candidates back and they pause for a second, and they'll often start going, well, in 1999, I started as a because that's our habit. And that's how a lot of interviews go. I've been in those interviews, but we've read the paper or the screen in the case of 2021. Your recruiter has read it. It's already been passed to the hiring manager who's going to make the decision. Everybody has said, yes, let's go with this person. So in an interview, don't take that opportunity to repeat everything that's on your resume. Think in advance of the tales and the anecdotes and how you have succeeded. What success stories do you have? What presentations have you given? What numbers do you have to report on? That's your chance to leap off the paper because we've already read it.
I love that metaphor. It's just like, this is your opportunity to tell the story about all these milestones that you've put into this. Like, these milestones have gotten you to a point that you get to have an interview. Now sell the hell out of it. Like, that's the reality. Be the person. You're not a list of things that you've achieved. Mm-hmm. You're a human person experiencing all these things. Now share us why they excite you and why you want to go do them again, or maybe grow upon that.
Mm-hmm. Tell them what you're going to bring to the job. And I can't tell you that every organization interviews like that. There's a lot of organizations that I've seen that talk about struggling with their interviewing. But I think if you just run through the gamut of what's on a resume, you're not going to find that fit. You're going to find the best. And like you said in the beginning, there is a huge difference between the best and the right. Right.
That's incredible. So much good wisdom being brought here. I knew you were going to drop some good bombs. We got a message from Drew, the story behind the milestones and achievements. He loves that. So yeah, Drew, thank you so much. Yeah. And you know how I said earlier before we start the show, I was going to look up and be like, hey, we're at like 40 minutes. We're like almost at 40 minutes on the clock.
We're
so
like
we've
right there
through this. Had some great conversations around recruitment and everything else. What's next for you in demystifying recruitment?
I don't know. I haven't decided yet. I'm not sure. I was talking to my sister the other day. My sister works in healthcare on the other side of it. She is a nurse. She's been a nurse for 21 years. So it's kind of funny that not only are we both working in healthcare on opposite sides of the spectrum, but we're both working with the military in one way or another. So my sister I posted the other day, my sister works with a world famous, renowned psychiatric hospital here in Canada where people from across the world will come for treatment. And she is specifically in a program called the Guardians program. So providing support to military members who have experienced PTSD and trauma. They might have addictions. So now both of us have found ourselves working with the military and supporting them, because I'm currently in a role that provides healthcare workers to military bases across Canada, which is really, really cool. I have a couple couple other divisions that I recruit for as well, but that's my one of the two main ones. But I don't know what's next. I haven't decided. I know that I always want to keep my passion for the job seekers because we all struggle. We struggle in the job seeking. I don't think that I ever want to branch into being a resume writer, which I have talked about. I would never do that. I don't want to take that responsibility for it. But I love that my passion for writing has been able to help. And I adore my job. I adore the organization that I work for. I work with phenomenal people who blow my mind every day, that are supportive and amazing. And it's a fantastic team. So I'm so happy to say I'm actually at a point where I'm just so happy with where I am. And now I feel like I have that ability to give back to people. I've used my writing to help people in other ways, different than what I am now. But I think it's nice I get a lot of joy from it.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad that you get joy from it because it provides a lot of value and you're using your voice to help others. And I think it really all comes down to the service of another human being. And that's what you've been doing throughout your career. And after this conversation, I totally understand why you're so incredible at what you do. Not that I didn't already, but like now we've shared it with the world.
We've shared it with more, yes.
Well, I want to be respectful of your time, Krista. So we've got the one last question I ask all guests. So we're going to jump in my time machine. We're going to go back 10 years, and you get to give yourself one piece of advice. What would that be?
Oh, just try. Just try, because you don't know what's going to happen. I limited myself for a really, really long time, thinking I wasn't good enough. I had nothing to contribute. I didn't belong in the conversation. No one cared what I had to say. And honestly, being on LinkedIn has changed that completely. And I've been on LinkedIn for a while. I was completely all in on the corporate side of it with building out my audience that way. But I had a conversation with Joel on June 6th. That was the big pivotal day for me. And he said, you know what? You can't take that with you. And usually that's advice we give our families when we say, why are you just working yourself to death? You can't take that with you. But he really made me stop and pause. And I do have advice that I can give people, and I can help people with what they're going through. I can't promise you a job. You might get a job. I might be able to help you. But I wish that I could go back 10 years and just try. I tell my 18-year-old niece all the time, you just have to try, because you don't know what's going to happen. And just because someone else has said it, just because Jean has said it, and just because Tom has said it, and Mike has said it, and Randall has said it, doesn't mean that the way I say it isn't going to resonate with someone, because the way I say it is very uniquely me, and not because I have a ridiculous Canadian Southern Georgia drawl, but it is going to be uniquely me and the way that I communicate it to people. And I deserve to share that, and people deserve to hear that.
Oh, like I preach, girl, preach. Like that is, I love that last bit about sharing your voice, because your perspective brings so much uniqueness to it. You have a different audience than all these things. You could be taking it from those messages from high level people, and the people you speak to may have never heard that. So definitely always try and always share and put your perspective out there. I love that. So
absolutely.
All right. Well, everyone, this has been episode 65. Krista, thank you so much for being on the show today and going through this. You've been incredible. And to everybody else, thank you for your comments and your likes and watching today. We really appreciate it. And our Find One Thing today is going to be like, find one thing to try. Try to put your voice to it. Let's take a page from Krista. All right. Until next week. I'm Gene, the Enjoyment Coach, and this has been LiveCast Conversations With. We'll see you all next Wednesday.